Blessings everyone, we are LATCH. LATCH stands for Lactation, Attachment, Training, Counseling, and Help. And we are a non-profit organization established in 2006 providing mother-to-mother breastfeeding help.
LATCH Los Baños chapter was formed in 2016. Our trained volunteers have been facilitating informal human milk sharing for infants in need and offering breastfeeding counseling and breastfeeding preparation classes.
We are grateful for our partners who continue to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding.
We are grateful to the Los Baños MIYCF Action Team and to our partners, sponsors, and volunteers.
Breastfed babies kept close to their moms are the most food secure in times of emergencies.
May krisis man o wala, ang pagpapasuso ang pinakamabisang proteksyon na maibibigay natin sa ating mga anak laban sa sakit at gutom.
Mother support groups in the Philippines recognize the importance of educating and empowering families, communities, and LGUs to prepare for and respond to emergencies.
We affirm evidence-based support by upholding Unang Yaka Protocol, MYCF best practices, and adhering to EO 51 or the Philippine Milk Code.
The pandemic and lockdown have underscored the value of three things.
Relactation is possible. It's the most sustainable help we could offer.
Donor human milk, along with counseling, is the next best option.
Finally, providing fresh, helpful food to families in need, we also support our local farmers.
Let us take care of and keep mother and baby together, especially during the first 1,000 days of life.
Together we say,
Nanay, we got your back. You are wonderfully made.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's roundtable discussion entitled First Things First, Prioritizing Breastfeeding and the First Food System. This is a roundtable discussion that is supported and presented by SEARCA, or Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study in Agricultural Research, and LATCH Los Baños in partnership and support of Kalusugan na Mag-ina and Arugaan. We thank you and welcome everyone to today's roundtable discussion. Today, we have invited wonderful resource speakers who will be sharing with us their experiences and best practices in supporting and promoting breastfeeding. But before you proceed with this program, we'd like to lay down some house rules. For this session will be recorded and it will be streamed online via SEARCA website and through the Solve platform and through Facebook. For our live Zoom participants, may we request all of our participants to put our mics on mute and continue to keep them on mute for better facilitation of our roundtable discussion. And for our panel speakers and moderator. And then we'll be introducing our moderator, panel speakers, and proceed with the presentations of our guest speakers, by which we will be asking our panel speakers to turn on their mic during their presentation. Each speaker will be allotted 10 minutes for their presentation, after which all the presentations have been concluded. Then we'll proceed with a roundtable discussion that will be facilitated by our moderator. Live Zoom participants may post their questions at the Zoom chat box and kindly indicate your name, organization, and to whom you would like to direct your questions to. If time allows, we will be selecting a few questions to be aired and to be read by our moderator and hopefully be part of the discussion. This roundtable discussion is recorded for your information and for purposes and will be streamed online through SEARCA website and through the social media pages through Facebook and other avenues. Good morning. I am your host, Vanessa Liwanag Librero. I am from LATCH Los Baños, a breastfeeding peer counselor. And LATCH is a nonprofit organization established in 2006, composed of breastfeeding peer counselors with chapters all over the Philippines. We are a mother support group, and as LATCH stands for, we provide lactation, attachment, training, counseling, and help for mothers and families by providing evidence-based and up-to-date information with the aim to engage a greater community to support, protect, and promote breastfeeding. We are thankful for SEARCA for being actively engaged as a community partner in LATCH Los Baños and Los Baños MYCF efforts, or the Municipal Infant and Young Child Feeding Action Network, through the Human Breast Milk Community Depot, and tapping local farmers for the NutriCare relief packs as part of emergency food aid in the previous disaster relief efforts in the local chapter in Los Baños. Last year, we have seen so many unfortunate incidents in our country. The Taal volcano eruption followed immediately by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this has affected Filipino citizens so much, more so for the indigent families. And it has especially affected vulnerable families with small children, infants, and pregnant mothers. And because of this disaster, we have also seen how fellow citizens have risen up to the challenge of supporting our fellow citizens through multi-stakeholder efforts, such as food donation drives, community pantries. And we have seen individuals, organizations, and institutions, big and small, come together to support our fellow Filipinos. But we have also seen during this disaster aid response that one important aspect has also been neglected, and that is in breastfeeding, which is actually the first food or the first food system. So we try to understand what is happening on the ground. Even if there are breastfeeding advocates and supporters and education, there's still this huge gap. So we want to understand from the experiences of medical doctors, field researchers, and field workers on what is going on the ground. And for now, to be able to expound further on this program, we'd like to introduce our host for today's program and moderator, SEARCA Director and UN Food Systems Champion, Dr. Glenn B. Gregorio. Good morning, Dr. Glenn.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Vanessa, Vani. A pleasant morning to our partners and our friends, especially from LATCH Los Baños. Dr. Mian Silvestre, the President of Kalusugan ng Mag-ina Incorporated. Good morning, Nanay Ines Fernandez, Executive Director, Arugaan. Good morning. Dr. Magdalena Wallery, the International Baby Food Action Network, and La Leche Leg International Leader from Timor-Leste. Good morning to our mothers, fathers, and friends from the academy, from the government, even from the private sectors, and all our stakeholders, farmers group, fisher folks. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, including the babies. Good morning. So SEARCA really is extremely glad to work side by side with you, with our partners from LATCH, for making this roundtable discussion on breastfeeding, first things first, prioritizing breastfeeding in the first food system, now a reality. We have been partners in food distribution in times of pandemic and bring nutritious food to our mothers, infant, young children feeding in Los Baños. So now we are having this discussion. So our partnership has really increased. As one of the UN food champions, and SEARCA is very much interested in breastfeeding as the first in our food systems. With our 11th five-year plan, we are working in our 11th five-year plan at SEARCA, which we just finished first year this year. So we have the next 4 years. We call it ATTAIN, we call it Accelerating Transformation through Agricultural Innovation. We give emphasis on SDG 1, which is zero hunger, which is much related to breastfeeding, responsible production and consumption, my favorite, which is really what we are doing right now. Achieve gender equality and empowering all women and girls, and even SDG 9, which is build resilience infrastructure, promote inclusive, sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. This is where innovation on the food system about breastfeeding. We at SEARCA, our priority areas, like we have 7 priority areas, but I mentioned some of those which are directly related to breastfeeding is on food and nutrition security. We work on youth and gender engagement in agriculture and rural development, which is very much aligned with that. And EcoHealth, One Health applications in agriculture and rural development. This is really One Health, One EcoHealth, which is looking at the health of the farmers, looking at the health of the babies, of our children, looking at the health of the plants, animals, and soil. So it's a holistic approach. It's like really breastfeeding is very much in line on that. And we're talking about climate resilience is also much related to breastfeeding as our first in our food system. I am positive that this discussion on the very basic but important, but sometimes being taken for granted about breastfeeding will yield a better, bigger, and smarter learnings and visible outcomes from the knowledge sharing that we will be having now, this event, and would resonate and could resonate and share it to our families, our communities, our society, even to our policymakers and to our academy about the importance of breastfeeding. And we hope that we will have a better, bigger, and a smarter food system for the future of our country and beyond. Once again, on behalf of SEARCA, which is Southeast Asian Regional for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, and LATCH Los Baños or LATCH Philippines, thank you. God bless us all. Mabuhay ang unang pagkain.
Thank you, Dr. Glenn Gregoria. That is the SEARCA Director and UN Food Systems Champion. Before we proceed with our program, we are requesting that we will have a photo op with our panelists and also for those participants who are zooming in. So if you can just turn on your videos again for our panelists so we can have a group photo before we proceed with our program proper.
Okay, on my count. Is everyone okay? Has everyone turned on their videos? Anyway, I'm counting. Please hold your smiles. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And now we'll be introducing before we introduce our panel speakers, we'll just play the LATCH video again. So everyone will have an overview of our advocacy to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding.
Blessings, everyone. We are LATCH. LATCH stands for Lactation, Attachment, Training, Counseling, and Help. And we are a nonprofit organization established in 2006, providing mother-to-mother breastfeeding help.
LATCH Los Baños chapter was formed in 2016. Our trained volunteers has been facilitating informal human milk sharing for infants in need and offering breastfeeding counseling and breastfeeding preparation classes.
We are grateful for our partners who continue to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding.
We are grateful to the Los Baños MIYCF Action Team and to our partners, sponsors, and volunteers.
Breastfed babies kept close to their moms are the most food secure in times of emergencies.
May krisis man o wala, ang pagpapasuso ang pinakamabisang proteksyon na maibibigay natin sa ating mga anak laban sa sakit at gutom.
Mother support groups in the Philippines recognize the importance of educating and empowering families, communities, and LGUs to prepare for and respond to emergencies.
We affirm evidence-based support by upholding Unang Yaka Protocol, MYCF best practices, and adhering to EO 51 or the Philippine Milk Code.
The pandemic and lockdown have underscored the value of 3 things.
Relactation is possible. It's the most sustainable help we could offer.
Donor human milk, along with counseling, is the next best option.
Finally, providing fresh, helpful food to families in need, we also support our local farmers.
Let us take care of and keep mother and baby together, especially during the first 1,000 days of life.
Together we say,
Nanay, we got your back. You are wonderfully made.
Thank you. That is LATCH, and that is what we stand for. Now we'll introduce our guest speakers for today's roundtable discussion. Okay, for our first speaker, we're privileged to have with us Dr. Maria Asuncion Silvestre, or Doc Mian, as she is more well known. She is a pediatrician with advanced training in pediatrics and neonatal perinatal medicine or neonatology at the Children's Hospital of Michigan and Hutzel Hospital of the Detroit Medical Center and Wayne State University, Michigan. She returned to her home country and joined her alma mater, the University of the Philippines College of Medicine, and its affiliate, Philippine General Hospital, in 1997, and served as associate professor and neonatologist, where she committed herself to pushing breastfeeding and the core of pediatric education. She authored a chapter on infant and young child feeding and fundamentals of pediatrics, a textbook used widely in the Philippines. And in 2010, she founded a nonprofit called Kalusugan na Mag-ina Incorporated, or KMI, which is dedicated to the health and mother-child dyad. KMI, with the support of UNICEF Philippines, has been contributing significantly to the Philippines Department of Health capacity and building efforts to serve the country's lowest socioeconomic groups. With WHO in Philippines, she collaborated on implementation of the essential intrapartum and newborn care, or Unang Yakap, First Embrace protocol. It's a time-bound sequence of evidence-based life-saving interventions in the labor, delivery, and immediate postnatal period. The program has been implemented in at least 9 countries. She is currently a member of the Independent Review Group for Early Essential Newborn Care and WHO Western Pacific Regional Offices that reviews countries' data on EENC quality. She has co-authored Painless Evidence-Based Medicine and has numerous research publications in peer-reviewed international journals. She has been recently recognized as the most outstanding physician by the Philippine Medical Association just this June 24, 2001. And welcome Dr. Mian Asuncion Silvestre. Okay, for our next guest speaker, she's lovingly called Nanay Ines. Nanay Ines is a pioneering and co-founder of the breastfeeding movement in the Philippines. She's the WABA coordinator for Women and World Task Force in 146 countries, and an IBFAN Southeast Asia representative for 11 countries, a WHO and UNICEF consultant and IYCF. She founded Arugaan on 1989, and through Arugaan, they have continuously undertaken relactation management, and in 2010 led a relactation intervention project in Rizal, Muntinlupa, and Laguna for 3,134 mother-baby pairs of Typhoon Ondoy survivors. And through Arugaan, she has transformed 5,140 peer counselors in 20 cities nationwide with 25 breastfeeding trainers from Arugaan. Nanay Ines is also known as a breastfeeding Lola. At 62 years old, she was able to breastfeed a 2-month-old, and at 63 or 64 years old, she was also able to breastfeed another baby. So she has shown us that it is possible. Relactation is possible, and that we can provide it for our most vulnerable, the babies. And for our next guest speaker, it's Dr. Magdalena Woolery, who is part of the International Baby Food Action Network, or IBFAN, and she is a LATCH League leader. She is a nursing researcher and lecturer with clinical and research experience in the study of infectious disease control among disenfranchised groups. Her objective is to apply her PhD knowledge and work as a nurse to improve health opportunities for medically underserved populations, with a strong emphasis on providing compassionate care. She is a LATCH League leader and currently involved with the International Baby Food Action Network, which consists of public interest groups working around the world to reduce infant and young child morbidity and mortality. IBFAN aims to improve the health and well-being of babies and young children, their mothers and their families through the protection, promotion, and support of breastfeeding and optimal infant feeding practices. And now we can proceed with our panel discussion, starting with our first speaker. Let's welcome Dr. Maria Asuncion Silvestre of Kalusugan na Mag-ina Incorporated.
Magandang umaga po. Good morning, everyone. And thank you again to LATCH Los Baños and to SEARCA for this really important opportunity to amplify the messages that we want to disseminate for breastfeeding. So this is my talk. Hopefully, I'll finish in about maybe 12 minutes. Embracing firsts, no unang yakap in the first food for the first 1,000 days. We always like to start our presentations with a disclosure statement. I declare no financial relationships with any manufacturer of any commercial products, especially those for milk formula, infant formula, and baby food. Next slide. Okay, as I was assigned my topic, I actually forgot to look for definitions of food systems. So this is the cramming that I did in the last maybe 2 hours. And I came up with this definition from the International Food Policy Research Institute of 2020 that to me, and I apologize to the United Nations, but to me seemed appropriate, and yet I had difficulty still. What are food systems? They're defined as the sum of actors and interactions along the food value chain, from input, supply, and production of crops. Please allow me to turn off my video. Oh, ayaw. Okay. Livestock, fish, and other agricultural commodities to transportation, processing, retailing, wholesaling, and preparation of foods to consumption and disposal. It includes the enabling environments, and this is the part that I particularly like. The policies, the safety-driven, efficient, and sustainable and climate-friendly food processes, no, which brings food to our table. And I went and looked for a more simple definition, and this is what I found in Sentient Media 2 years before. The food system takes into account everything that happens to a certain piece of food before it reaches our digestive tract. Fairly simple, but when I looked at the illustration, it turned complicated again. So allow me to position maybe our framework for breastfeeding as the first food in the food system that hopefully we can position in the current lingo, the language that is being used in current times. So this is a slide that was given to me when we assisted the UNICEF and the Scale Up Nutrition Network in pushing the first 1,000 day campaign. But I prefer not this computation, but this computation of the first 1,000 days that emphasizes that the day 0 or day 1 starts in the first 270 days of the child's life in the uterus, the 9 months of pregnancy, but instead of 365 days times 2 until the second birthday of the child, we frame it using IYCF, using the Infant and Young Child Feeding Global Strategy, which uses the numbers 180 representing the 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, then the subsequent 550 days until the second birthday of the child. So let's break it down. Infants should be exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life, starting at birth in the first hour or 2, no? To achieve optimal growth, development, and health. Thereafter, they should receive nutrition that is adequate and safe, consisting of complementary solids, while breastfeeding continues up to 2 years or beyond. Break it down again. Start breastfeeding within 1 to 2 hours of birth. I'm extending it a little because some babies are born by cesarean section. Breastfeed exclusively for the first 6 months of life. And from 6 months of life, add adequate, locally appropriate, if possible, indigenous complementary solids, while breastfeeding continues up to 2 years or beyond. If the mother and the infant agree to do so, then extended breastfeeding should be practiced. No? Let me go quickly to the firsts, okay? The first trimester consists of constitutes the first early environment of all of us, no? And I'd like to quickly introduce the concept of epigenetics, is that you are born with your genes, okay, your chromosomes, but this early uterine environment actually impacts on how your chromosomes manifest as a phenotype. So things can happen to your organs that are being created, that are growing and maturing inside those first 12 weeks of intrauterine life. And the former hypothesis, the Barker's hypothesis of intrauterine programming is no longer a hypothesis. And population studies have demonstrated that an adverse early intrauterine environment can impact on the way the fetal, the embryo grows and develops within that womb. And the impact, the compromise of neurohormonal systems of the fetus can impact even into adult disease conditions like the metabolic syndrome. Ibig sabihin po, overweight, obesity, the spectrum into diabetes, into cardiovascular diseases like heart attacks and strokes, no? So what happens to the child in that first trimester because of the impact of epigenetics is very crucial, and that's why we're going backward into the intrauterine life as very important window of opportunity for interventions. Moving forward into the first month, what is killing our newborns? Roughly are 1.1 million newborns born in the Philippines every year. If you look at the causes of these newborns dying, it is still basically preventable causes. Complications of prematurity, asphyxia, the lack of oxygen to the baby's brain after he or she is born, and or infections, okay? A emerging third or fourth cause of newborns dying is congenital anomalies. And some of these congenital anomalies can also be prevented with proper diets of the mother. Another first, the first week of life. Unfortunately, sadly, it is this first week that constitutes the highest risk for a newborn to die. In fact, the first 1 to 2 days are the highest risk for these babies to die of hypothermia, of difficulty to start breathing, of infections and complications arising from traumatic births. No, the first week is the hugest, is the largest risk for any of us. No, the first needs of a newborn are basic, and they are always to be able to breathe normally, to be kept warm, to be protected, and to be fed. And these needs are irrespective of full term, premature, irrespective of race, of sex, of socioeconomic class. And breastfeeding initiation actually meets many of these first needs. We have demonstrated that the evidence is solid for the first embrace. Here in the Philippines, the popular handle is the first embrace, consisting of a sequence of time-bound steps that every health worker, whether it's a doctor, midwife, or nurse who attends to the delivery, the baby is immediately and thoroughly dried, very basic. Removing the wet cloth allows early skin-to-skin contact on the mother's abdomen or her chest. Only then is the third step done, which is to clamp and cut the umbilical cord, which is still delivering warm, oxygen-laden blood from the placenta to the baby. So it is not clamped immediately. And the crucial, but sometimes very difficult, fourth step, which is not separating the newborn from his mother so that the first breastfeed is completed. Okay, this non-separation of the newborn from the mother is what we push when we really try to educate the mothers, even during their prenatal classes, to breastfeed in the first 1 to 2 hours. Another first is the first 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding. My thoughts, the first 6 months are a time of infant-controlled feeding. The baby is the boss. The baby is not subjected to forced feeding, as in bottle and formula feeding, is not subjected to an unchanging, sweet, creamy taste of formula with so many additives, no, over the first 6 months. And thus, the infants are more likely to develop wider tastes, palates, and flexibility with solid feeds. And this makes for better appetite regulation, more so if you think about the ingredients that are in breast milk. For example, endocannabinoids. Nako, you might know the name cannabinoids, but we're talking about endogenous cannabinoids that exist in breast milk that are formed by the mother that help a baby regulate his or her appetite. Queso or milk morphines help a baby regulate. So these exclusively breastfed babies, if fed throughout the day and night, eventually are able to sleep regulate and have deeper and well-regulated sleep. They have better mood regulation. So they are what are called nucleotides. This term has been misappropriated by milk companies, but really these are intrinsic ingredients or components of breast milk that have been documented to help really make exclusive breastfeeding babies, especially those directly breastfeeding at their mother's breast, more regulated. They don't run to chocolates or video games for pleasure or satiety. They run to their mothers or other social contact. But the key, if at all possible, is to avoid separating the product, breast milk, from the process. And this potential lies in breast milk being a living and dynamic product that the mother's body produces in response to her environment. Breastfeeding is life-saving. If you look at these preventive health interventions that actually have been estimated to save lives, top 2 are breastfeeding, which reduces child mortality by as much as 13%. And if you add the 6% of complementary feeding, you can prevent even 1 in 5 childhood deaths before the 5th year of life. What are the costs of us not breastfeeding or not helping our mothers breastfeed? It's an increased vulnerability to disease, morbidity, and mortality or death. Increased health systems costs, which are a significant burden, both in normal and emergency contexts. The cognitive losses because of lost wages, because of the inability to rise in socioeconomic class, because of difficulty in securing jobs, no? And the irreversible brain development that is lost when you are able to intervene only after the first 1,000 days. No, these cognitive losses really incur losses in social capital, no, in our Filipino children and generations to come. And of course, the household formula costs constitute a significant proportion of a family's income. These are data from the Alive and Thrive project of FHI 360. The cost of not breastfeeding in Southeast Asia incurs humongous economic losses, no, as a percentage of the gross national income. And if you see the Philippines there, that's about 1.05% of our gross national income. Not a one-time thing like Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda, but an annual economic loss that we are doing by ignoring the importance of breastfeeding in our food systems. How much does not breastfeeding cost ASEAN member states? These are the estimates again from Alive and Thrive. And you see here that Philippines is second to Indonesia in the economic losses from not breastfeeding computed in US dollars. My key messages: the first 1,000 days computed, framed on the IYCF Global Infant and Young Child Feeding Strategy, a little math, 270 days of fetal life, plus 180 days of exclusive breastfeeding, plus the 550 days to reach the 2-year birthday, okay, is our first food system, if you will, a food system that, if not optimized, can really impact on life, both short and long term impact is what we're talking about, no? Thus, we have to protect, support, and promote IYCF practices, both under normal and emergency contexts. This first food system saves lives, protects children, health, nutrition, and development, and benefits both mothers and their children in the long and the short term. Not breastfeeding incurs immeasurable losses. And like Dr. Glenn mentioned at our preliminary meeting, for children, we have to do it right the first time. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Doc Leanne, for that wonderful presentation and bringing back the foundations of breastfeeding as the first food system of humans. And now proceeding with our welcome, we would like to welcome our second guest speaker, Nanay Ines Abellana Fernandez of Arugaan.
Blessed morning, and I'm happy that for this interaction and sharing of our experiences and expertise in relation to women and children first, and the intervention we had as best practices in response to disaster typhoon of Yolanda, Ondoy, and during COVID times. Next slide, please. It means a lot to a mom, especially when they are deprived of the first food, because the woman is the first producer, the nurturer of our next generation, life giver, life bearer, and it is a lifetime investment. If we look at economics of formula milk feeding, it dislocates our economy. It damages our future. And for a Filipino family, it is too much women's work. It affects the wages and worries. So for that alone, it is not only about health, but it is about economics and politics issue. And according to the economists of Australian National University, Crawford Institute of Policy, economist Julie Smith equated the global trade value of breast milk. And they found that a woman who breastfed for 2 years and more were able to produce 3,900 liters of precious breast milk. And remember, a teaspoon of breast milk contains 3 million fighting bacteria, including anti-COVID. So you see, a woman who breastfeeds for 2 years contributes $3 billion US. And that's why it should be the first in the food UN system in terms of calculating the cost contribution. Next slide, please. Again, you could see in this slide, the woman was pushed to poverty and pushed to crime. She became a shoplifter. And when we went to the islands of Leyte and Samar, we found a malnourished, severely acute malnourished mom and baby. And we asked the barangay captain, the head of the community, that this is a social responsibility, that let us help, that no child should be exploited and malnourished by formula milk feeding. And when we asked the mom what happened, she said, my baby was breastfeeding and was healthy, but I was asked by the doctor to stop because I have tuberculosis. But her tuberculosis is not a contraindication. Rather, we should manage her food needs and also give medicine and continue breastfeeding, manage her lactation. So at the onset, because this baby, Dahlia, is 1 year and 4 months, but look, pitiful 4 months. We asked the breastfeeding moms in the community, we give them counseling about breastfeeding benefits, and they contributed expressed breast milk for the transitional milk as we rehabilitated baby Dahlia. And we give indigenous food mix, and we gave baby Dahlia. We were trying to put her to our breast with our wet nurse in the team of Arugaan. But of course, baby Dahlia is already 1 year old and 4 months. So she is not familiar with new faces. But after 6 months of continuous helping the mom, the family, the community, baby Dahlia was able to recover and become robust again. So this is a very simple intervention of mother support group. Next slide, please. In the next slide, I will show you the intervention we had in another island in Samar, in another town in Samar, in Sirum, barangay. And we set up a tent, a mobile tent and cluster for the moms for breastfeeding, counseling to recapture back that power. And we found a mom with 2 babies together with the grandma, and the toddler is bottle feeding, formula milk feeding. Also the baby, newly born, is also formula milk feeding in times of typhoon calamities. So we asked an experienced breastfeeding mom attending the counseling to have a cross nursing, switch nursing, put the baby on her breast so that the baby will start acquainting with latch. And immediately the baby latched on because the baby was handled properly with positioning and proper latch. And we had a lactation massage on the mom to make her relax and to enhance her production and flow of her breast milk. And we do the spoon drip while the baby is put back to her breast. At that instant, it just took us an hour of intervention. So she was able to be relactated when she went back home. Next slide, please. The next slide would show how we were able to respond, just like LATCH Los Baños did and other mother support group like Breastfeeding Bicolanas, the Modern Nanays of Mindanao. So they're able to, we went to Taal, survivors of the volcano and the volcano eruption, and they were in the evacuation camp. And we got volunteers from Nueva Ecija Breast Friends, from Breastfeeding Bicolanas, from Arugaan Best Team, and we come together, including our next speaker. She flew from Timor-Leste to learn how Arugaan do the emergency response to address maternal, infant, and young child feeding. And we use indigenous foods. But with this consideration, we are amidst commercial conflict of interest. And the next slide, please. You will see the multinational baby food companies. Next slide. They are corrupting our lives. Not only the families, but also our political system and healthcare system through many incentives and lobbying, and how they project through insidious advertising. And they are the ultra-processed foods that undermine the power of the first food, which is breastfeeding. Next slide, please. And within the UN system, with this next slide, the CODEX ALIMENTARIUS ensures food safety and international standards. But you will see yearly, especially when there is this meeting in Berlin to decide international food standards of food safety, majority of the government delegation are represented, 40% are represented by multinational sugar beverage food, all these artificial foods. And they have funded the trip of the delegation and other incentives. So this is how they try to weaken existing laws. Existing laws stronger, like the milk code in the Philippines. In the UN system at the CODEX ALIMENTARIUS, there's so much dirty tricks of marketing and lobbying and negotiation just to set, we aim for high standard, but they want a low standard. So we really have to be participatory to what is the food safety for us, for all over the world. Next slide, please. Next slide would show the food, the products of the ultra-processed foods of these companies, food that makes you ill. And it is science-based. All medical books would say that milk, dairy products is an allergen food that contributes to asthma, respiratory ailments, and many more illnesses. Next slide. Food that makes you ill, these ultra-processed foods. In the next slide, you will show how the commercial industrial farm would feed chemicals that would come into our body system, that would affect the epigenetics, the genes they disrupt the endocrine disrupting system that is very important for our reproductive system in the woman. And next slide would also show the food that makes us ill, but they generate so much profit over health, and how they are advertised as like magic syrup with all these additives, preservatives, and flavorings that are all artificially chemical-laced. Next slide, please. How would we let them stop all the sugar foods that is the food of the bacteria, sugar? So especially in this pandemic. And yet, if you look at this food that makes us ill, it is a junk food. It is unnecessary. It is a creation of want. It is not a creation of need. It is so commercialized. It's commercial. It is consumerism, and it affects the wages of the Filipino families and also in Southeast Asia. Next slide, please. The next slide would show how we should be sustainable with our indigenous food that heals and nourishes. They are good sources of calcium, micronutrient protein, and complementary to breastfeeding. Continue breastfeeding beyond 2 years. And this is how we show from policy to practice the Arugaan complementary feeding, the mother, infant, and young child feeding in nutrition and health. And we engage the children to be participatory for cognitive development, for nutritional imprinting. And I hope let us wake up to the first food, which is breastfeeding, the first food of humanity, and the second food, complementary feeding, using indigenous food that nourishes and heals. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you, SEARCA, LATCH Los Baños, and our cooperating organization, Kalusugan ng Mag-ina and Arugaan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nana Ines, for that insightful presentation. So we understand how even well-meant intentions can sometimes undermine breastfeeding and undermine support for mothers and our vulnerable population. Okay, for our next guest speaker, we would like to now invite and welcome Dr. Magdalena Woolery. And if you can unmute your mic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Greetings from Timor-Leste. Thank you so much for everybody for having me. speak. I feel very humbled to speak about human rights first when we're protecting breastfeeding in disasters and emergency situations in Timor-Leste. And as my Ines mentioned, I had the honor of learning from the Philippines, because they are indeed globally the gold standard in emergency response. And I brought back much of the learning experience from the Philippines to Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste is a beautiful country with a population of 1.3 million. We're a small country. And in the 16th century, it began trade that turned actually into occupation and colonization from the Portuguese. And in 1975, Timor-Leste became independent, but within a few days, Indonesia had invaded. And for the next 24 years, there was a brutal regime inflicted on the Timorese, and over 100,000 people died of famine and disease. Indonesia, my country, where I was born, still has left a legacy, and it's through their import trade of ultra-processed products, including instant noodles, rice, palm oil, and what we call here masako, MSG, and their milk products. These products fill stomachs, but have no nutrition. Actually, the MSG is used to make the plain white rice and oil taste edible. And a typical diet for a pregnant mother or young child is actually white rice with oil and masako. We have one of the highest rates of malnutrition in the world. 1 in 2, that's 50% of our children under 5 are stunted. 50% of our under 5s, the highest in the region. 1 in 24 children will never experience their 5th birthday. Although I'm going to talk about the recent flash floods, I just wanted to highlight the history of Timor-Leste and how trade can be used for good, but also can have a predatory impact and violates human rights. Okay, I want to change the slide. Oops. There you go. Sorry, we have very slow internet in Timor-Leste. We're one of the poorest countries in the world, so please forgive me if there's a problem with the slides, the transitions. We have very slow internet, but I'm going to do my best. So human rights and breastfeeding. We know from the data that industry have a long history of sabotaging breastfeeding and undermining maternal child health. IPFAN have been collecting data for over 40 years now, but the good news is that we have tools, we have frameworks, and we have the WHO code. We have the Convention on the Rights of the Child, SEARCA. We have the operational guidelines for infant and young child feeding in emergencies that protect our women and children from predatory marketing. And we use this as a shield. Every infant and child has the right to good nutrition, and breastfeeding is an integral human right. And breastfeeding is more than just about the milk. It is also about the mother's health. When breastfeeding rates go up, malnutrition declines, and breastfeeding prevents malnutrition in all its forms. When breastfeeding goes down, breast cancer and other cancers rise. This is very much a human rights issue. Timor-Leste suffered horrific floods between this year, 29th of March to the 4th of April, which resulted in flash floods and landslides affecting all 13 municipalities. There were 41 deaths. Our population is small, and especially in our city, Dili, everyone knows everybody. So 41 deaths is a lot. And over 30,000 households across the country were affected. And the majority was in Dili. What we experienced was an influx of infant, young child formula, bottles, maternal formula, milk products, and other inappropriate ultra-processed products distributed across evacuation centers. And those are some of the images there. What did we do? Well, we advocated as part of our protocol for immediate release of the standard joint statement of infant and young child feeding in emergencies. Unfortunately, this was sabotaged by proxy in government. And we also advocated for Mother Support Group to be deployed as soon as possible, which is our Alola Foundation, to be deployed in evacuation centers. Again, industry used delay tactics, and they gave companies a 2-week period, a grace period, to enter camps and distribute unnecessary milk products to already very malnourished women and children. We worked hard, we worked tirelessly, and every day we built capacity for nurturing care safe spaces in emergencies and beyond. We couldn't stop. We had to constantly strategize every day to find ways to prevent industry interference and sabotage. Nurturing care is a WHO framework, and it's the first time that we have done this in emergencies. And it's a beautiful framework that's evidence-based, that encompasses a holistic nutrition, responsive caregiving, security and safety, and opportunities for early learning and good health. And these are some of the images from some of the evacuation centers. What was our action? What did we do? Well, under the safe space of nurturing care, essentially we provided protection. It was an integration of maternal child health and infant and young child feeding. We targeted the very most vulnerable. And in emergencies, it is not adults like us that die. It is not disabled people. It is not the elderly. It is children under 5, and in particular, the babies. So we brought medical team to find out the children that had diarrhea and respiratory infections. And we did immunization, building education. The slogan of a strong woman. We use that to draw of our children. WHO code and also operational guidelines. Fortunate as have the code enacted into code is still because Timor-Leste has endorsed, and so they knew about their our doctor, Maria, will be very happy to know that we did 0 separation and skin-to-skin contact for our mothers. And we did relactation and developed a simple community wet nurse database. We did a bottle amnesty. There were so many dirty bottles, and bottles are a risk of infection. And so we exchanged the bottles for cups, and in the process supported mothers with relactation. We did cooking of traditional nutritious foods, and connected Pro Erma restaurant school for women in the districts with our mother support group, and they used innovation. I shared the recipe for plumpy nut, and they produced a locally viable and affordable peanut butter that the community learned to make. We often have supply issues in Timor-Leste, so it was a wonderful collaboration. And they also supported us with fresh vegetables and fruits, and very importantly, avoiding ultra-processed products. We educated communities about the risks of the milk products. WHO has said very clearly that these child formulas are unnecessary and nutritionally dubious, but with a lot of marketing, a lot of people have been brainwashed. And from day one until even today, industry proxies sabotage efforts. And I have some case studies I'd love to share with you. So unfortunately, because we are very vulnerable with no code, there were 2 government agencies mass distributing milk products and other ultra-processed products. I'm gonna ask someone to keep an eye on the time because I get very focused on the children. Just let me know. Someone, Vanessa, can you wave if I'm more than 1 minute on a slide? But this is very important. And we're such a contrast to the Philippines. Our children are very vulnerable. And we've discovered through good monitoring that Indo milk was on the distribution list for our nutrition program. And for a traditional meal that we have in Asia called bubur kacang ijo, the traditional meal is mung beans and santan, which is coconut milk, not Indo milk. Indo milk is cow's milk. So we made noise about this, and we had success. I was in the camp and I received a phone call to say, I have good news to share with you. Indo milk has been removed and in place coconut milk, as it should be. And then with the next breath, the bad news is that the nurturing care safe spaces, you need to stop. And well, we are strong women and a strong nation, and we stood our ground for human rights, and we strategized and worked with Ministry of Health, and we stayed for the children because they deserve our protection. Anyway, the wonderful news is that we collect data and we could see that, and this is the same child who was severely, acutely malnourished. His MUAC was 11.2. A red MUAC indicates threat of death. And we have so many children like this. We stood our ground. We provided nutritious local foods. We provided breast milk for this child his mother was actually lactating with, she had a 5-month-old. So we expressed and gave that to the child. He received good care, nurturing care. And this boy, his MUAC reading now is over 13, and he's got brilliant weight gain. So that is just one case study. I have just a couple of more. Red Cross, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the International Federation of the Red Cross have signed an agreement with Nestle, and this conflict of interest is actually felt around the world in many countries, including my homeland, Indonesia, the Caribbean, and other places, and it was surely felt during this emergency. We discovered that Red Cross distributed not only condensed milk, which is a violation of our infant young child feeding in emergencies operational guidelines, but they also violated the WHO code by distributing infant formula, handing it to mothers that were breastfeeding. And in the top left picture is a request, and all this information is in the public domain. So it's public information I'm sharing. So the Red Cross there was asking for formula, and always very late in the evening, like 11 o'clock at night, and repeated requests. When I came to this Red Cross Center, I've covered the face of the the volunteer, Red Cross volunteer, but the mother I have consent to share. I found in that center 10 lactating women. They were all breastfeeding. Not one was using formula. And this mother of twins, one of her children, I received a phone call from the hospital to say that one of her children was query sepsis and was now in the critical care unit. The children had received 1 bottle of formula. And so we document, we monitor, and as IPFAN, we must hold these companies accountable. And what else unfolded was that lobbying from businesses. We found that the president's wife and the prime minister's wife had signed agreements, and during this emergency were distributing milk products, Danco, Nestle products, Indo milk, instant noodles, Country Choice, which is a fruit juice, but has as much sugar as Coca-Cola. We case study this business in that working in this influx, and in the bottom in the with their bare hand in many of our cases are the worst because they are in society. And camp is in Maslido. We had to go by boat. Health came, and the foods, the local nutritious foods we were providing through partnerships to the IDPs. She was smelling the oranges. A week later, we had discovered that she returned, the Minister of Health returned, but not with Ministry of Health. She returned privately and distributed Indo milk. Also, another case worthy of note is that during the anniversary of the WHO code, 40 years celebration of the WHO code, our monitoring code tool, the server was cut from Indonesia. I'm sharing these human stories and these case studies with you because Timor-Leste is very vulnerable, and we must protect the human rights of our women and children. And I am still working in the camps for the children as a volunteer now. And I just want to thank you for listening to me. I think my time is up, and you know, I put human rights first, or companies. It's very important that human rights come first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Magdalena Woolery, for sharing those real stories of the women and children on the ground. So we have seen that even with well-meant intentions, sometimes these conventional efforts that people give in providing food aid for our disaster-stricken areas, sometimes they do have unintended consequences. So moving forward, it's good that we have this discussion so we would understand what are the challenges on the ground from the from first-hand accounts from those who work closely with mothers and young children. So now we will proceed to our roundtable discussion. And before I turn over to Dr. Glenn Gregorio, we would like to thank again SEARCA for hosting this roundtable discussion. Thank you so much, and for hosting this on your sole platform or your web educational online series through the SEARCA website. This event is recorded and will be streamed online through the SEARCA webpage and through the social media pages. And now, this presentation is in partnership with SEARCA, LATCH Los Baños, with the support of Kalusugan na Mag-ina Incorporated and Arugaan. Now we will have our roundtable discussion, which will be moderated by SEARCA's very own director and UN Food Systems champion, Dr. Glenn Gregorio.
Thank you very much, Vani, and good morning to everyone. I enjoyed listening, even though I'm a little bit familiar with breastfeeding, and all of them are breastfed, but all those information is something very new to me, very empowering, and very what I want to run to the president to implement them the breastfeeding. Like that is really a single, as mentioned before. I read somewhere that this is a single government investment that will have a greater from the child to mother to the economy to the health, really environmental friendly. Everything to be touched in the SE. I hope we could make it more frequent for people to realize the importance of breastfeeding as the first milk, as we have discussed. I enjoyed a lot about Dr. Mian, especially on talking about, I'm a geneticist, talking about epigenetics. We could talk about epigenetics all the time because this is really for the outcome, the phenotype, the health, or the or up to the physical being of the child. And of course, she talked about the first of everything. So we have to memorize the importance of breastfeeding, and we listen to Nanay Ines, the passion of really in times of disaster, breastfeeding is our best. So BF is our BF. So breastfeeding is our best friend, and you see how they sabotage, they use the formula ultra processed food to have an immediate food for the disaster victims, and it feels very good, but in the long run it becomes really a big problem to the society, and they are using this as a propaganda to, although many people realize the importance of helping immediate help. Example, if I'm an ordinary rich man, then I will say, okay, let's give noodles right away. It feels good to give milk. It's very nice. But we have to realize the importance of what's the implication of this. It's only the immediate hunger will be addressed, but the economy, the health, it's really a big problem. So we have to touch the policymakers on this and the domino effect of using the non-breastfeed. So also to Dr. Magdalena, I like your story. It's really very emotional, or really have to touch the policymakers. You have to talk to them because they have a very good intention. The intentions are very good in whatever angle you see, but if you see the importance how the ultra processed company are doing to sabotage this too, because it's also always their interest will be once you introduce these ultra processed foods from noodles up to formula milk, it will really it becomes addictive to the victims, and they will be already sabotaged, and they will be addicted to buy this immediate food, and this will really ruin their income, their savings, and all those things, and it will be a lifetime problem. So a lot of discussions there. So I hope we could really now I'll be asking some basic questions to everyone. As you know, if you say breastfeeding, I know this is the most environmentally friendly and everything, but we have also realized that as ordinary people, we have realized that the symbol of milk is cow. So the symbol of baby is the baby bottle. Even our dolls are using baby bottle to it's cute, not breastfeeding itself. That's why I realized is I'm a biologist, and as I mentioned, I'm a geneticist. You say mammals, we are mammals, so it means that's the symbol that we are really. That's our symbol being breastfed and all those things. It's very important, and also the most important I could see also it's very specific, species specific. If you're human, you have to drink human's milk, so it should be species specific. So once you cross, you have different kinds of problems that you will be experiencing. So my first question, I have a lot of things to say. I'm so emotional in talking about this one, but I have to ask you a question because we have to take this opportunity. Here, you're here to these questions. My first question, in layman term, for Dr. Mian, what's the big deal if, in a layman's terms, what's the big deal if we will not use the breastfeeding as the first milk, or what's the big deal if breast milk is not the first food but the milk? So especially for those who are in newly mother or thinking to get married and have babies. So what's the implication? They say, oh, that's not a big deal because I need to work. After 3 months, I need to work, so I have to condition my child to use the bottle feeding.
Yes. I think for the longest time, ang messaging natin for the longest time, our messaging has to mothers, to families, to communities, even to health workers, has been breast milk is only food, is only nutrition. But what we've been trying to do, amplify the message, ang breast milk ay also helps the newborn fight infections. And as a newborn, yung kanilang their immune systems are totally vulnerable, no? And in the first hour of life, they're exposed to so many microorganisms. And the first breast milk, or what's called colostrum, that is produced by the mothers in the last weeks of pregnancy is actually hugely loaded with antibodies and immune cells and stem cells. So this is a message that is not being put across too much, that what the baby ingests, takes in, is fed, helps that baby survive, no? Helps that baby survive. Not just, colostrum is not just food, it is also a way for that baby to survive and be able to fight infection, no? Why exclusive? Ibig sabihin, no other liquid goes into that baby's digestive system, is because breast milk is also it also helps baby's digestive system mature. It provides the baby with the flora, no, the proper set, the appropriate set of good bacteria that helps these newborn babies fight off bad bacteria and other microorganisms that threaten sheer survival. So as a biologist too, as a zoologist, as a neonatologist, the first feed really should be breast milk. And the message is, it's beyond just feeding. It's beyond just feeding. It's also protecting these newborns from dying. Giving a bottle within the first hour actually sabotages the way they learn how to feed. So if you think about Pavlovian conditioning, if you don't allow them to learn how to breastfeed from the breast itself, then learning from the bottle actually sabotages the way they are able to feed from their mother's breasts directly. So that's why, though it's supposedly a natural process that mothers are equipped to do, this is where the crux of the matter lies. For many mothers, there are delivery practices that make it difficult for them to exclusively breastfeed to save their babies' lives within that first hour.
Yeah, thank you. So go natural, and this is the most important. You mentioned, you emphasize this in your lecture. A little bit of fast talk, ma'am. What province is the model province in the Philippines for breastfeeding, or what community has the highest rate of breastfeeding?
Oh my goodness.
Laguna?
Goodness. I can only, Doc Glenn Mahirap by province.
Or
And
any model community?
I would like to say already Laguna, pero I still get reports of difficulties from our colleagues, our mother support groups.
Okay,
no?
maybe
In Laguna.
others will talk about that. But my next question is this: is there a correlation between industrialized province or community compared with urban community about breastfeeding? Is in the urban or the rural community has higher breastfeeding rate compared to the industrialized communities?
The best performing exclusive breastfeeding rates as of when I last looked was the Cordillera Administrative Region, Benguet Mountain Province, and the lowest exclusive breastfeeding rates are in the richer regions like Calabarzon, unfortunately, Region 3, which is Central Luzon, and the National Capital Region. In general, those who have a little more money to cash out. Tama po ba ako, Nay Ines? No, the lowest exclusive breastfeeding rates are in the most urban regions, like
it's quite
and NCR.
Yeah, it's quite logical that will be because they think we are working mothers, so we don't need to breastfeed. Yeah, we'll go back to that. Now for Nanay Ines, the very passionate, and I love your passion because we need really to be passionate to influence our policymakers, our local government to help us out on this one. How would you make in layman terms about the milk code? Because milk code is a very popular, or even in the academy, we don't know about the milk code. What is milk code and in a layman's term? Because they say it's a very powerful, but the most, a lot of people, or I may say a lot of business people or private sector is covering it up. Milk code, how empowering is this to support the breastfeeding program?
Thank you po. Milk code is meant to protect the power of breastfeeding. And it is meant to regulate this insidious advertising, knowing the fact that when you open the radio now, when you open the TV, milk is advertised. And it comes now in follow-on formula, all ages. So the milk that was advertised for adults has become now a milk for babies. And now the milk for babies has become now a milk for elders. So this is very unscrupulous advertising and marketing. And it is not only there. They are not even in the milk code. The milk companies are not allowed to be part of policy making because they distort the decision on the choice of infant and young child feeding. The information is so diluted with regards to science-based. And yet they use the word science-based to propagate, to entice, to seduce women, even policymakers. Their families are also trapped consumers. So we really have to change this concept that we need milk and we don't need milk. We need mother's milk. But it has been commodified to what to feed to the baby and to all ages. So the milk code does not overcover to regulate the marketing promotions of infant formula, but it also covers other foods and beverages. And
thank you. Yeah, I know it's a very, so the milk code is there, but my question, other question, because I have several practical questions. What's the role of the fathers or
The
family
role of the
members in the breastfeeding program or this breastfeed advocacy that we are doing? So what's our role as father, or do we have a role, or we just leave it and that's your problem and I'm just working? And so can you give us some tips or how you will encourage the father?
shared parenting, shared responsibility. After all, we make the baby not by ourselves, but with the father too. They are part of it. And therefore, the fathers can cook food for the family. And that includes the mom, because the mom is the vulnerable group and she is the nurturer. She needs food. So the father must also learn breastfeeding information to support moms, because it is the loss of confidence that contributes. Moms, all moms are capable to breastfeed, except for very few. But that is not an excuse, because we can relactate. So the fathers should join the mothers during pregnancy for a breastfeeding class, so that they can support all the way. And when they compute the budget, they save 90,000 pesos a year. Now, if the mom is breastfeeding, the mommy now can ask the father to give back the 90,000 savings for the year for the mommy's spending.
Yeah, very good. So fathers, so feed nutritious food to your wives, to the mothers, and support them. Actually, it's very important to keep them, because that's the time they start to cry, they start they need support really. I think the role of the father, I could feel that I have to feed good food to my wife, nutritious food. Once you feed good food to your breastfeeding wife, then you will produce good milk, and everything will follow. So that's our support as a father. And it's good for me, because during the time I don't need to wake up in the morning and or in the midtime or midnight to fix the bottle, or I just guide the baby where the breast is. And that's a very beautiful way of
don't give artificial milk. Don't give artificial milk to the mom.
Yeah.
Don't be a catch consumer.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now I have to talk to Dr. Magdalena. Your experience, your passion, your sacrifices for Timor-Leste is very impressive. How the milk company is sabotaging, or I may say sabotaging. I may say they may have a good intention. Even the government have a good intention. Even myself, if I don't know about the milk code, my first instinct is to give milk to the evacuation center. I feel good. I spend a lot of my money to give milk, and I see them drinking milk with a picture. So that makes most of the donors happy, but they have to realize the importance. So my question for you is, I know the challenges, but whom shall we approach? Are we going to the president? Are we going to the Minister of Health to put our advocacy? Because we don't, this is a very important fight we have to, or are we going to shout to the milk companies, or what advice would you tell us?
It's a very good question. And I've lived in four years now in Timor-Leste, and I never saw the first year one case of obesity. And this is the year I'm seeing obesity in Timor-Leste. So we have a serious problem, more than any other country. And we fought companies like Nestle in Southern Africa. And it's so challenging because they are more clever than us. They are multi-billion-dollar industry with the best marketing, and they've been doing this for decades. They have people in government, we call them proxies, not many, I would say 99.9% of the people in our government are wonderful, and they genuinely care about our women and children. But there's always one, and they are always strategically placed. And our WHO code has been on the desk for over a decade now, and every time it comes close, there's a knock and it goes back. And in the meantime, many children die. So I don't have all the answers, but I think the best strategy we learned and lessons learned from Africa fighting big companies is that you bring the good souls together and multi-partner mother support, give power back to the communities, let them advocate. The big problem for us is we have no monitoring tool now. It's the server's been cut. So we have that, I shared a hashtag code heroes, and use that tag. And we have a Nobel Peace Prize laureate in Timor-Leste, Dr. Jose Ramos Horta, who's very close to the UN, and he is a code hero. So we're using good people like that to advocate for the code. It's such a difficult question. Every day we're strategizing, but I feel like everyday industry are just one step ahead of us. In that Camp Cristal, where we were able to reduce over 50% of ultra processed products, remove bottles, relactate, we climb mountains to sensitize the very poorest people in Timor-Leste. Don't waste your money on Nestle Dan Cow. You don't need to eat instant noodles. We have good food. Eggs are affordable. We have affordable, local, delicious food. A few days later, 2 people climbed that very same mountain and told every single household that they must buy country choice guava juice. And I went straight to the shop and I looked at the 2 containers of guava juice and I looked at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has 27 grams of sugar. Guava juice has 26 grams. And this is a very expensive drink and our people are poor. So these companies are more clever than us, and we need your organizations to work with us because we can learn a lot from the Philippines. But we are very vulnerable, like the malnourished children. We're a new country. We have signed the Convention of the Rights of the Child. We have endorsed the WHO code. We have not enacted it into law. If we can work together in solidarity for human rights for our children, it would be great. I don't think these companies are as innocent, as they make out. They have a very slick image. They lobby behind closed doors, and many of the decision makers have signed agreements now, and it's very hard for us who are health professionals, because not everyone has a good heart. People will take kickbacks and incentives. So
yeah, it's very difficult, but we have to continue the fight. I even suggest that we must have also the best breastfeeding champions, like what we are using in UN Food System champions. We must have breastfeeding champions around the world to make this happen. We have to organize ourselves. So it's really changing the mindset of the community, to the local government, to the policymakers, and I think that we have to reserve our energy for that one. Okay, I think we have less time. I just have one question for all of you. Now, example, you are in the Food System Summit in New York by coming September, and I'll give you 1 minute each or 2 minutes each to give your pitch about the milk code or the importance of breastfeeding in the food system as the first food system. How would you tell the whole people in New York who are the head of states are there, the policymakers, the industry, the academe, and these are the influencer of the government. So I'll give you the Miss Universe question. How would you pitch in 2 minutes to convince them about breastfeeding as the first food in the food system? Okay, so that's my question, or that's my pitch. So I'll start with Dr. Mian, then go to Nanay Ines, and to Dr. Magdalena. Go.
Oh my goodness, my elevator pitch is this. Every single one of us should have accessed our first food from our mothers. And a mother's work is actually breastfeeding. Mothers all over the world should be invested in to be able to empower them to be this first both micro and macro food system. If we do not do this, we are doing a disservice to humankind. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mian. Now, our passionate Nanay Ines.
The first food producer is the mother. And if a mother breastfeeds for 2 years, the equivalent of global trade value of breast milk of 3,900 liters of breast milk produced for 2 years means $3 billion US. So that is how every mother would contribute in the world. So we use local foods, and that will help our local economy and our local farmers. Today's health is tomorrow's wealth.
Good. So today's health is tomorrow's wealth, and breastfeeding is the first things first, the first things of those. Thank you very much. Now, Dr. Magdalena, you are in New York now.
If I was and breastfeeding, it's not a one word about the father, mother, because sometimes in the statistics, that's 50%, like of the little boy. And I would remind, as and together, multinational people, we must protect, because about nutrition, about the economy and the environment and the education level. It is everything. And it can mean the difference between life and death. And it is a fundamental human right. And we are code heroes, every one of us. And together we are stronger than any company in the world, ready to sabotage. We are there as code heroes. And I thank you so much for listening to me. And on behalf of the children of Timor-Leste, please carry on protecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalena. Actually, Timor-Leste, we are a Southeast Asian Regional Center. Our Southeast Asian is plus Timor-Leste. So you are really part of SEARCA. So we are ASEAN plus Timor-Leste. That's why we have 11 country states. So thank you very much for that pitch for the basic human rights of the children and mother, and everyone is the breastfeeding. For me, I may say that in the food systems summit, I will say, how would I say? In the food system summit, we are talking about food, production in agriculture, processing, transport, and consumption. But we forgot our first love. Our first love, our first food is breast milk. So breast milk is the foundational food of everything. If we do it right, then everyone, there's the possibility of being successful in the food system is good if we start our foundational food, which is breastfeeding should be done first, implemented first, and everything will follow. So that's my message for them. So thank you very much for our food, first food breastfeeding champion, breastfeed champion, and I hope I'll be one of them very soon if I qualify, and I'll be one of the strong advocates of breastfeeding. I have 6 kids, all are breastfed, and I still have been working very well because I have no sick child along the way, so they're very good. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nanay Ines, Dr. Mian, Dr. Magdalena. I hope you will, God bless you and more power to you and more funding and everything support to make this happen. So we are all together to make to show that the breast milk is the first food for everyone. Thank you very much. Now back to you, Vani. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Glenn Gregorio, for the wonderful discussion with our panel speakers. We appreciate your time for logging in and making time despite the challenges, despite internet connectivity issues and all the other work that you are doing. But we thank you and appreciate you for your time. We'll just take this opportunity also to thank the supporters of this event. I'd also like to, of course, acknowledge the other mother support breastfeeding support groups who are also tuned in today. We'd also like to acknowledge the artist who has wonderfully loaned his artwork for our event. Artist John Amar Salvosa, he's the one featured for our wonderful poster featuring his painting, Kahit Papano Ipanangga Ako, Jonathan Marcelgosa is an artist well known for his breastfeeding series of paintings. And we thank you for artists and community supporters like him. So thank you again. We'd like to acknowledge again SEARCA, Dr. Glenn. Thank you so much for supporting this endeavor because we don't have enough platforms. The message of protecting, supporting, and breastfeeding should be really brought out, not just among the mother support groups, but even to the academic, to the science, and the research community, because we need multi-stakeholder efforts. We can't do it alone. And when we just talk about ourselves, it's more like preaching to the crowd, to the choir. So thank you, Dr. Glenn, for those fresh insights as someone who has been asking the right questions. And may we continue to ask the right questions and really engage each other and learn from each other's experiences. So again, thank you to the SEARCA team who has been organizing this and the team behind. Thank you to the supporters from LATCH Los Baños who are also behind the scenes, inviting our panelists and also doing the invitations and helping organize. And for everyone who are tuned in today, this will be streamed online through the SEARCA webpage. There will be an announcement on the exact date when this will be posted, so you can just keep posted on the announcements. This will be in SEARCA Facebook page, LATCH Los Baños Facebook page. For more information about the organizations that are a part of this roundtable discussion, you may also go to their Facebook pages, Kalusugan na Mag-ina, or KMI, Arugaan, and also you may follow Dr. Magdalena Woolery and her Code Heroes series of really fighting for breastfeeding on the ground. And thank you again. Thank you everyone for those involved, and we hope that you could join us again in the next series of our roundtable discussion. And everyone, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nanay Ines. Thank you, Dr. Mayan.
LATCH stands for Lactation, Attachment, Training, Counseling, and Help. And we are a nonprofit organization established in 2006, providing mother-to-mother breastfeeding help.
LATCH Los Baños chapter was formed in 2016. Our trained volunteers has been facilitating informal human milk sharing for infants in need and offering breastfeeding counseling and breastfeeding preparation classes.
We are grateful for our partners who continue to protect, promote, and support breastfeeding.
We are grateful to the Los Baños MIYCF Action Team and to our partners, sponsors, and volunteers.
Breastfed babies kept close to their moms are the most food secure in times of emergencies.
May krisis man o wala, pagpapasto ang pinakamabisang proteksyon na maibigay natin sa ating mga anak laban sa sakit at gutom.
mother support groups in the Philippines recognize the importance of educating and empowering communities and LGUs to prepare for and respond to emergencies.
We affirm evidence-based support by upholding unang yaka protocol, MYCF best practices, and adhering to EO 51 or the Philippine Milk Code.
The pandemic and lockdown have underscored the value of three things.
Relaxation is possible. It's the most sustainable help we could offer.
Donor human milk, along with counseling, is the next best option.
Finally, providing fresh, helpful food to families in need, we also support our local farmers.
Let us take care of and keep mother and baby together, especially during the first 1,000 days of life.
Together we say,
Nanay, we got your back. You are wonderfully made.